Hi gang, Rob here. It's the afternoon of 19 November 2016, coming to you with a knife review. And for those of you who like short knife reviews and don't like to sit through one of my droning on and on 30 to 45 minute knife reviews, you just want to know if it's a good knife, well, I'm going to do that for like the first 2 minutes of the video, and then the rest of you who are super engaged can hang out for the rest of the time. So what we're looking at, guys, is the Lionsteel KUR in green G10. We're not going to spend a lot of time with the box because it's really kind of a thin corrugated box. It's not much to look at. There is one thing. I got to read you this because this has got to be. I love Lionsteel, guys. I love them. They're just a little weird, you know. They're Italian. They got that Italian thing going on. Here's the quality certificate, okay, which is in this little fold-out pamphlet. It's sort of their warranty statement, and I got to read this to you because it's so funny. Lionsteel warrants that all of our products are free from defects in material and workmanship. If a knife or other product fails to function as it was designed, it should be returned to Lionsteel's warranty repair department for examination and evaluation of the problem. Does that mean I get a new knife, or does it say they'll fix it? No, I don't know. Maybe it's a translation issue. I love Lionsteel, but you know they're Italian, man. What the heck? Love them. Okay, so here's the KUR. You know, it's spelled in all caps, K-U-R. I thought maybe it was an acronym. Maybe it is, but if it is, I can't find it. So I'm not going to call it the K-U-R. I'm going to call it the KUR. And it is a modern folding heavy-duty EDC, or let's say small to medium tactical folder. The blade is a 3 7/16 inch, kind of dramatic drop point, almost a spear point, full flat ground of Udelholm Sleipner steel, which don't let me forget to tell you a little story about the Sleipner. The stock thickness is 4.5 millimeters, about 175 thousandths, which sounds really chunky, but remember, it's full flat ground. So although it's not super thin behind the edge, you're looking at a rather broad 17 degrees per side secondary bevel. It is a pretty good slicer just because it's such a gradual grind, okay? The blade has a gorgeous stone wash, a beautifully crowned spine. The handle, which is about 4 13/16 long to the end of the backspacer, about 4 5/8 to the end of the G10. It is that sort of Lionsteel trademark, a beautifully 3D machined and mill textured finish, which I just love. If the handle shape looks familiar, this is sort of the big brother to the Lionsteel TRE. The 3 rapid exchange. Same designer, Moletta, whose name they've finally published. It's like Michele something, starts with a P. Yeah, what a great designer he is. Construction of the knife is a stainless steel liner lock with beautiful hardware, which I'll get into in more detail. A crowned exposed titanium backspacer with an impact device. I suppose you could break glass with that. And then a reversible tip up, very thick wire spring pocket clip. Okay. All right, let's get into it. By the way, weight a little hefty, 5.6 ounces, but very well balanced. Balance point right at the back of that first finger groove. So the mass of the blade and the mass of that rather large solid titanium backspacer work well together. You know, when you get a smallish knife that weighs 5.6 ounces, then balance becomes an issue. And it's very neutral. Okay? You know, if you have a super butt heavy knife that weighs over 5 ounces, then it gets annoying. Okay? Handle thickness is about 5/8 of an inch, which sounds really wide, and it is. But because of the 3D machining, you know, its thickest point is right through here, like through the lateral line. And, you know, at the top, at the bottom and the top of the handle, it's much thinner than that. So it still carries better than its width would indicate. Okay. So we've kind of talked about the blade, its shape, its grind, its cutting ability. Good cutting ability for a knife that is a heavy-duty blade. If you know, 4.5 millimeters at the spine and pretty thick behind the edge. So could you pry with it? Yeah, you could. Is it still a good slicer and cutter? Yes, it is. Plunge grind executed perfectly. Nice and symmetrical side to side. And look at the sharpening notch, will ya? Just perfectly done. See where the plunge grind stops? See where the edge starts? Perfect. Great job, Lionsteel. They don't always get this right, but they did this time. The knife deploys via flipper only. It's almost a good flipper design. Pretty heavy lock bar tension, but nice free action on thrust ball bearings. So the metallic bearing race with a ring of bearings, and then grooves are cut in each of the stainless steel liners and in the blade, and they ride on hardened steel all the time. Flipping action. I think I watched Kevin Cleary's video on this knife, and he described the flipping action very well. It's totally reliable. It is not spectacularly fast. It's really easy on the finger. It comes out all the time. You can't hardly make it misfire, but it kind of comes out with leisure. Still makes a nice positive smack when it locks up. I like it. I think part of its lack of ultimate speed is a heavy blade. You know, it's a 175 thousandths thick blade chugging on out of that frame. That also gives it sort of that flywheel reliability. Once you get that thing moving, it's going to go till something stops it. So pretty cool. The flipper is very versatile. I would prefer, you know, see how we've got sort of a slight slope like this. I wish it were kind of the other way, because it'd be a better push button flipper, and it is a push button flipper. It's also a light switch flipper. It's also a middle finger flipper, ring finger flipper. I think it's even a pinky finger flipper. That's a nice flipper, guys. No death detent where you know. That's one thing I really prefer, that this is a liner lock, because that doesn't matter how hard I squeeze the knife. Same detent. I'm not pressing the lock bar and forcing the detent ball into the hole, thus rendering the knife undeployable. Horrible feature on a tactical knife, by the way. Horrible. So great flipping action. It is super smooth. It's not ridiculously free. Like I said, a lot of tension on that lock bar. So the detent ball has some friction on the surface of the blade tang, but not overly so. Also, what's my biggest flipper pet peeve? Or, well, not my biggest, I have a lot of them. One of my biggest flipper pet peeves is that when I release the lock bar and that flipper hits my thumbnail, that in a lot of knives the detent ball is not jumped up on the blade tang, and I have to like double clutch it and close it farther. Well, not so on the KUR. It's hard to see because it's a liner lock, so you can't see the cutout from the side, but it does have almost 3 o'clock lockup. If you look where the end of the lock bar is, come over from the pivot. So that aids in getting that detent ball up on the tang early. Just a dream to flip, guys. I know for a lot of you that's more important than it is to me necessarily. But you know, I've been flipping this knife solid for 2 whole days and flipping it a lot. And my fingers don't really even hurt yet. I do switch hands from time to time. No jimping, I just slipped off. So let's talk about ergos. Saber grip, really solid, really positive. A little short run of jimping. The liners sort of poked through the edge of the scales. They have jimping cut into them. And then the jimping carries through the G10. Don't know if you can see that. By the way, while we're looking down into the knife, let me roll in a picture, and you can pause this and sort of look around. I disassembled the knife after I sharpened it to clean it and such, and I wanted to see what made it tick. So take a look at the picture. Okay, not to interrupt the ergos discussion for a talk about the interior of the knife, but yes, we will. So, did you notice the precision and the intricacy of the machining and the liners? This is about the second knife I'm going to say this about I've ever taken apart. It comes apart like a Smith & Wesson revolver side cover. Okay, if any of you guys have done that, you know that it won't fall out in your hand. You can't pry on it. It kind of needs a little impact to just sort of pop it loose. And that's how these scales come off the pivot and the three three standoffs. These are pivot barrels that go through the backspacer, locate everything the right way to assemble a knife. You're not screwing 2 screws into the side of a backspacer that's not located. It uses pinned locating and then screw together construction. That's how you do this, guys. Whether you're using a backspacer or standoffs, you got to have stuff shouldered into both sides of the frame, and this is so. When the G10 scale sort of just falls off, and then the stainless steel liner which nests into the G10, it's on there, man. So it's some tough wiggling and tapping to get it apart. Nothing is going to move in any way in this direction. Okay, beautifully constructed knife. Yeah. Did you see how beautifully finished those liners were? Everything is so precise. The fit into the G10 scales is perfect. Just very, very nicely done. So let's continue on our ergos discussion. The saber grip is just beautiful. The jimping doesn't look spectacular. It's just enough to sort of catch your thumb, know where you are, and it's not going anywhere. The hammer grip is beautiful. Even if you want to sort of sneak up here and index with your thumb on the front of the frame, that even works. There's no forward finger choil, but you don't really need it for that. You can sort of rest your index finger on the flipper reliably. The draw cut grip is very good. If you try to go this vertical draw cut, it's not as good. The horn kind of digs into your palm. And then if you want to go reverse grip, you could put your finger over the backspacer, and it is crowned, so it's not terribly uncomfortable. I would probably, I don't know, maybe go on top of the clip with it. Not uncomfortable. You could even, make a fist. Don't even need to wrap it, because you got this big old flipper preventing your hand from going forward. Now I just want to talk about some fit and finish details. I keep showing you these crown surfaces. I want you to look. We'll kind of do a slow roll around this knife. Just try to find a surface anywhere on this knife that didn't have attention paid to it. Even look at the edges of the lock bar. How milling was done, chamfers were done to make it comfortable. You know, this is a knife that you can just sort of mindlessly play with. It takes no effort. It just works with your hands so well. Even the flipper tab, you know, all three sides of it are crowned. Well, two sides of it are crowned. One, yeah, all three sides are. Everything is purposeful. Even look at the G10. Look how it's milled as it approaches the fastener heads. It's sort of, they're not countersunk and they're not flush, but the G10 comes up to meet them. You see that? And it does it in a round fashion on the driver's side and a rounded triangular fashion on the other side. Isn't that an innovative way to restrain those fastener heads to keep them from turning? You know, not D-shaped barrels, but triangular heads. Even the pivot is done that way. All the hardware's big too, guys. A T15 driver does your pivot, and then I believe T8s. No, I think those might even be T10s. I can't remember, but they're not T6s. Everything is built well and robustly on this knife. Speaking of robust, you guys are going to have fun with this. The clip is insanely strong. Well, where's my sage? Yeah. Take a look at the difference in wire diameter. Oh, actually, it's not that big. Yeah, well, it is big. Look at the wire diameter on the KUR compared to the Sage 4. And I'll tell you what, it's not much of a difference in diameter, but it's a big difference in tension. That's as far as I can bend that clip without breaking my finger. And it was worse when I got it. It was very difficult to insert and even more difficult to extract as it came from the factory. From the pocket, what I did is I took a plier jaw and slid it underneath, and I yanked and pried, and I thought I was going to break that clip, and bent it enough that now it does insert one-handedly and comes out without bringing half the pocket material with it. It's doable, and I did have to swap it. Of course, I'm left-handed. One downside about the clip, it's a little overly complicated in its method of attachment. It doesn't go like through the backspacer and down. It's just sandwiched between the near side G10 scale and these grooves in the backspacer, and there's like 3 bends on the end of that as it goes down and in. In order to move the clip from side to side, you have to take the knife apart. And it isn't fun to take apart because it is so tightly fitted. But once you get it how you want it, it's done. So, very nice. By the way, Sleipner, let's talk about Sleipner a little bit. It's sold as an improved D2, I guess. That's how Lionsteel markets it. I don't know what Wiedelholm really says about it, but it's similar in chemistry to D2, and I had always heard it was a more corrosion resistant sort of version of D2, but we had steak and eggs this morning at breakfast, and I cut my breakfast steak with this knife and got home a few hours later, and I had a big brown stain here and a little one over here. Now it came right off with flits, but it wasn't dried on, it was stained in, which I thought was interesting. So this is not stainless, guys. You know, I guess it's maybe a little more rust resistant than D2, but my D2 doesn't rust. So let's see if this Sleipner, even with a pretty thick blade, cuts like the other Sleipner I've sharpened, and it sure does. You know, this blade is not a skinny slicer. but it's pretty doggone sharp. The thing I like about Sleipner and sharpening it and the edge it takes, it doesn't kill you to put an edge on it. But it takes such a keen, fine edge. And it holds on to it for a long time. In that regard, it's very much like D2. And that thing is scary. This knife, by the way, comes in a few colors of G10, and then it's also offered in, I think they call it the Metamorphosis handle. It looks black, and it's aluminum with some kind of a goofy gimmicky coating on it that as it warms up in your hand, it turns into a camo pattern. Now that handle on this knife, that knife won overall knife of the year at Blade Show 2016. And the sad thing is, it got more of its attention for its handle than it did for the rest of the knife. You know, knife guys like shiny things and gimmicky things and cool stuff that's new, don't we? Yeah, we all fall prey to that. The sad thing is, that Metamorphosis handled version is very hard to find now because they were recalled by Lionsteel. The reason they were recalled is that this ridiculously tight pocket clip going in and out of pants started ripping the coating off the knives. So they recalled them. They aren't replacing them with clips. The new production Metamorphosis handled KUR comes clipless with a nice Lionsteel leather sheath, very much like the one you get with the TM1. It might be the same sheath. So no clip. The rest of that story is, this is such a great knife with G10 handle scales and stonewashed blade. I think this could be a real knife of the year contender. G10 liner lock. Because the rest of the design is so good and it's so well executed. Best price I found on these, and I bought this, full disclosure, with my store credit at collectorknives.net. You know, you guys know that I do some product over videos for Mike, and I had built up enough in my store credit that I was able to pay for this knife, and I think it was under $160 though. That is an awfully nice knife for $160. In fact, I'm hard pressed to think of a $160 knife that I think is a better value than this. Just a beautiful, beautiful knife. My favorite Lionsteel they've ever made. And this is not a customer's knife. This is my knife. And it isn't going anywhere. Just get you one or two. They come in different colors. That's all for this one, my friends. Grace to you and peace from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. And remember, the word is sharp.